CBMA conference. So I request Dr. Logras sir to start the today's activity.
So very good morning, all participants. So we welcome you all for the second day of the plenary sessions. I hope this today all the plenary session will be helpful to you. And to start with, Dr. Amol Dongre, followed by Dr. Nachiket Shankar, then Dr. Sunita Vaga, then Dr. Zayapragassarazan, followed by Dr. N. Sita Raman, and the last speaker will be Dr. Kavita Rati. So I hope all these sessions are very important in the implementation of competency-based medical education. At the end, we will have a validation session, and we will announce the prize for the poster, oral, and short film competition. So over to Dr. Balaji. Please take over.
Yes, sir. 1 second, sir. Yes. So our next speaker from JIPMER, we have sir, Dr. is Zayapragassarazan. Sorry if I pronounced it wrongly, sir. Sir,
Jayapragassarazan.
so can you tell it again?
Hi, I'm Jayapragassarazan. Actually, it's written in French. So in Puducherry, we have the custom of writing spelling in French.
Okay.
So you can pronounce it as Zaya. No problem.
Okay, Zaya, sir. Okay, sir is the additional professor and convener of the MCA Regional Center JIPMER. He's also ATLS educator and FAMER fellow. In the Department of Medical Education, JIPMER Puducherry. Sir is going to present on how engaging remote learners in medical education. I think an apt topic at this situation. Over to you, sir. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji, for your introduction. So let me share my screen now.
Yes, sir.
So it says you cannot start. No, there is no permission for me to share my screen. Can you please permit me?
So you can, sir. I just stop sharing. Can you try again?
Yeah, thank you. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Okay, fine.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So a very good afternoon to everyone. And at the outset, I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak on this topic. So now before I just go into, I go into deep into the topic, I wanted to give a brief introduction about this topic, the background information about the topic. So if you just see here, this picture depicts some 20-30 years back, we were dependent on this slide. And after that, a lot of innovations have taken place in the field of education. And now we are in the age of what we call this information and communication technology age, or the era of ICT. And some even just few years back or few months back also, our people are not fond of using this tab or mobile. But now the whole classroom is there inside this tab or mobile. I think you all will agree with me. So once the technology which we said should not enter into the campus, now it is the technology that has allowed the whole campus, the whole institute or the college or school inside this small gadget. So with this short background trigger, let me move on to the objectives of this session. For the next 10-30 minutes, I'll be discussing about who is a remote learner and what is remote learning, what are the remote learning, how to engage, what is meant by learner engagement, what are the factors influencing learner engagement, technological tools for learner engagement, and success indicators of learner. These are the topics which I'm going to deal for the next 30 minutes. Now, the next thing is, before we talk about the technology, remote learning, distance education, technological innovations, I would like to briefly tell you about the four revolutions that four major revolutions that took place in education, the field of education. The first revolution being changing the responsibilities of education from parents to teacher and from home to school. This is the first revolution. This took some thousands and thousands of years ago. So where there were more teachers, then after that humankind identified some people as teachers, and the responsibility of teaching was bestowed with these so-called teachers. That was the first revolution. So that before that, only parents were doing the job of what? Teacher. So this is the first revolution, and from parents to teacher and from home to school, it was transformed. And the second revolution is the replacement of oral instruction by written words. After the discovery of, after man started during the course of civilization, man started writing, man started inventing words and other things, and that became the second revolution. And that also revolutionized the field of education. And the third revolution is the invention of printing press and subsequent availability of it. This is the major revolution that stood for a longer period. Even now, it is one of the major source. So this invention of printing press enabled the teachers and the content creators to create a lot of content in the form of textbooks, and that created a big revolution. And now the current situation is, so everything is now whatever we believed the books as, the library, which once upon a time all libraries used to hold thousands and thousands, lakhs or millions of books. Now all these libraries are slowly being shut down, and then they are converted into e-learning centers. Okay, so that is the fourth revolution, invention of electronics that led to the application of mass media and ICT, information communication technology. Otherwise, this revolution is called as the Grey Revolution. It is because of information explosion and advancement of technology. The Grey Revolution here refers to the gray matter of our brain. Now it is very easy to get information, very easy to process it, very easy to assess it. So a lot of things have made this advancement in technology has made things very easy. So with this, let me move on to the term what is remote learning. As our topic says, strategies for engaging remote learners, remote learning in medical education. One of the important term in this the topic is remote learning. So if you look at this picture, so once the teacher was physically present in a classroom, now most of the teachers are virtually present. Virtually, they are inside the computers or inside they show their presence virtually in some form of gadget, through some gadgets. So that is one thing. And thanks to the transformation agent, the COVID, we call the COVID as a transformation agent. Thanks for COVID. Not only COVID, the term remote learning is not new. Maybe for us it may be new, but it is already there for the last 2 decades. It is in the form of it is called as distance education or remote education, remote learning. So a lot of other terms are there, e-learning. But this has gained momentum because in India and almost across the globe because of the COVID-19 situation. And now we are not going to again we are not going to go back to fully traditional classroom. Even if you go back to the traditional mode of learning, teaching and learning, this remote learning is also going to become part and parcel of our routine classroom. That's what I would like to say through this. And who is a remote learner and what is remote learning? So when the teacher, a student, teacher, and information source are not physically present in a traditional classroom environment, it is said to be remote learning, and the learner is called as a remote learner. And in remote learning, the time, it is separated by time and distance, and information is transmitted via some technology. Either it can be in the form of email or discussion boards or video conference or so and so. A lot of other technologies are also there, and it can be either in the form of hybrid or blended learning. So hybrid is that which includes both traditional and online method of learning. So the other name for hybrid learning is blended learning, and it can occur synchronously or asynchronously. Now what I'm doing is a synchronous session. So when the session happens real time, it is called a synchronous. And if the same session is put in a form of recorded in the form of video and it is mailed to the participants and they look at it and then they get back to the teacher with some comment, then it becomes asynchronous. It is a kind of store and forward. So synchronous is real time and asynchronous is, of course, it is also online, but it is not real time. And also referred as distance education, virtual instruction, remote learning. These are the other names given for remote learning. Now, what does it mean to engage? The next word in the topic is the engaging remote learners, the engagement. What do you mean by engage? So engage refers to engaging our learners. So we have a lot of sense organs, not a lot of, we have many sense organs, major 5 sense organs: ears, eye, nose, skin, tongue. So all these sense organs help us to process the information around us. So are we effectively using these sense organs in our traditional classroom? The question is no. Frankly, if you think and then say, it is no. Okay, so that is what. So engagement here refers to engaging the sense organs. The more you engage your sense organs, the more information is gathered by our learner, and this helps the learner to process the information and then use the information in the form of knowledge or attitude or skill. So What does it mean to engage? In education, the student engagement refers to meaningful student involvement throughout the learning process. So what is meant by meaningful student involvement? We are every day the teachers are taking lectures in their lecture halls. So how many of us have ever thought of whether my lecture is meaningful, whether my students are getting meaningful information, whether my students are processing this information into a meaningful learning? Are they able to convert this information into knowledge? Are they able to generate evidence for having converted this information into knowledge? So this kind of thing, have you ever thought of it? Even if you have thought of it, have you ever implemented it? So that is a big question mark in our system. So the next engagement, it also refers to the degree of attention, curiosity, interest, optimism, and passion that students show when they are learning or being taught. So when you say you are engaging a learner, it should motivate your learner, it should increase the curiosity, it should sustain their interest, it should, it should make them to involve more and more, it should make them to respond, receive your information, respond to your information. These are all the indicators to say that you are engaging your learners. The learning encounters that facilitates to acquire knowledge, attitude, and skill. So in other words, engage also refers to whatever learning encounters you provide to your that is provided to your learner. So that should help them to acquire knowledge, attitude, and skill. Otherwise, it is called as a learning set. And the current term what we are using in MCA is the competency. Whenever you say the word competency, it is not as a separate entity. It includes all the three major domains, that is knowledge, attitude, and skills. Right. Then it also says that engaging means facilitating learning through effective use of sense organs. So unless you unless you help your learners, to effectively use their sense organs, it will not be easy for them to process the information provided by the teacher. Then it also says that quantity and quality of learners' participation. So these are all the definitions for engaging. When you say engage, many of these things should happen in your classroom. Then only we can say that as a teacher, you are engaging a learner, or as a learner, your learner is engaged in a meaningful way. So why is it important to engage our learner? So the reason, all of you know, it's very obvious that we have our own curricular objectives. That is one reason. Second thing is we have our own objective. The learner have their own objectives. That is another thing. So research has demonstrated that effective and purposeful engagement increases the span of attention, the attention span. So you know the normal attention span of human beings, the focused attention span is only 8 seconds, and the sustained attention span is not more than 20 minutes. That is why if you look at the TV advertisements and all, they don't exceed more than 8 seconds like that. But if we engage our learners purposefully and in a more meaningful manner, definitely that will increase their span of attention. Then that also helps them to sustain their interest in the topic or the subject that is under discussion, and provide motivation to practice higher level critical thinking skills. If we actively engage our learners, and that will open up their mind, and then that will make them to interact more and more with their fellow members or teachers or the object that was given to them, so that will help them to use their higher order thinking skills or critical thinking skills, and it also leads to meaningful learning. So whenever you say student engagement, that means we are talking about an engaged learners. When you say the learner is engaged, it requires 4 pillars. So the first pillar being, these are the 4 pillars. The first pillar being the personalized learning. So you may think that how can I, in a class of 150 students, how can I personalize my teaching to each and every student? That's a very good argument. But at the same time, we can think of pluralizing our presentation. So you have a content in hand, and we always go with the PowerPoint only. That is only one format we have. Or we stick on to the podium and then we start delivering the lecture. So other than these two, most of the time we only stick on to these two methods. So here what they say, personalized system of learning here is that not just personalizing each and every content to each and every learner. So whenever a teacher enters into a classroom, he or she is expected to pluralize his presentation. The same content in the form of a PowerPoint, same content in the form of a mini lecture, same content in the form of an activity, same content in the form of a case-based scenario, the same content in the form of a group discussion, same content in the form of a video, same content in the form of a demonstration. So of avenues or opportunities are available to convert a single content into different formats. So that is what it says. Person. Suppose as a learner, if I am not comfortable with one single format, I have an option to choose another format for my learning. So that is the first one. Second one is learning without limits. So for example, in small group discussions and all, there is no limit for the learner. So his mind is open and he can argue, he can put forward his ideas, he can come out with suggestions, he can solve problem, he can think freely. So opportunity should be given for the learner to what? Think without limits. So that is again one of the pillar of student engagement. And the third pillar is student driven learning. When all these things happen, say for example, go back to your lecture session and see whether is there any opportunity for a learner to make that particular session as a student driven session, or to make whether your lecture session is making your learner to learn the same content in a student driven manner. No, because in a lecture session is a one-way method, and we just deliver the content and then we just like that move out of the hall. But we don't check whether the learner has learned, if he has learned, what kind of learning has taken place, what is the evidence for that. But in student-driven learning, you are giving opportunity for the learner to think, listen, read, write, discuss, solve problem. All these things will help the learner to look forward for the next level of the content. And he himself or herself will decide, okay, what is my next level? Where can I get the next level of content? How can I learn? So that makes them a self-directed learner. That is called a student-driven learning. So whenever we teach, we should always assure that our students are slowly becoming student-driven. Okay. Then the last one is the competency-based learning. So why this competency-based learning is very important? Because in competency-based learning, as I already said, it is not only knowledge, not only attitude, not only skills. It is a learning set. So when you say competency-based education, the conglomeration or the combination of knowledge, attitude, and skill. So at the end of the day, when you say your learner has learned something, you have taught something, your learner should have learned something, and your learner should be able to demonstrate or exhibit that knowledge, attitude, and skill. Then only you can say that your learner has been properly engaged. That is why this competency-based is considered as one of the pillars. Now, then only you can say that your learner is engaged or engaged learner. Coming to the dimensions of learner engagement, these are the three major dimensions. There are a lot of other dimensions. These are the major dimensions of learner engagement. One is the cognitive engagement. Here we are engaging the central level, the brain, the cognitive part of the thing. Here we give the knowledge base, that is the knowledge base about the topic under discussion. So that is called as cognitive engagement. Next, here in cognitive engagement, the engagement can be in the form of questions, engagement in the form of a lecture, engagement in the form of reading, engagement in the form of writing, engagement. So what all cognitive skills can be brought inside here. It's not that only you are expected to give only one cognitive skill. So because lecture is also one of the cognitive engagement only, but lecture alone will not help our learners. As I said, reading, writing, listening, active listening. So all these things are the cognitive engagement. So one content in different formats. The next engagement is the emotional engagement. As a teacher, we should try to connect with our learners through feelings, through emotions, through actions. So all these things will connect our learners with our feeling, and it will appropriately help them to apply these emotions to the content. So that is called as the emotional engagement. How frequently the learner listens to you, receives your information, respond to your information, whether he recognizes the information. All these things are related to the emotional engagement and how he reacts to the information like that. Then the third dimension is the behavioral engagement. It says that behavioral engagement refers to how frequently the learner attends your classroom, your session. It's a behavioral engagement. He is regularly attending. If he is regularly attending, what is the reason? To escape other classes he is attending, or to really he is fond of your class? So that is called as behavioral engagement. Whether he is interacting with the other fellow members, and whether his reading habits has improved, whether his teaching hours have improved. So all these things can be classified under behavioral engagement. So cognitive engagement, it engages the brain. Emotional engagement, it engages the heart, that is the attitude. And the behavioral engagement, it engages, it modifies, it transforms his behavior towards higher order learning. That. So the engagement process should be like this. It is expected to be like this. So here, the teacher is here. The second component is the content, and the third component is the learner. So what it says is that as a teacher, first of all, we have to establish connection with our content. Say as a teacher, always we have a content to communicate to our learner. So you cannot just like that take a content and then we cannot communicate with our learner. Then it is not meaningful delivery, or so meaningful learning cannot happen. So that is why the field of the art and science of education comes here. The art and science of teaching comes here, which you call it as a pedagogy. So a teacher should be well versed in pedagogy. Though the content is already there, the teacher should be well versed or skilled enough in identifying appropriate teaching learning method to convert this content into appropriate transactional strategy. So as a teacher, you have a content and you should be familiar with the pedagogy, that is the art and science of teaching. So the content is now converted into a transactable content. And now this is called as the connection of the teacher, the establishing connection with the content by the teacher. So unless you establish relevant content with your relevant connection with your content, you cannot establish connection with your learner. Okay, now going to the learner. Now having established right content, association or connection with the content, we are going to transact it to the learner. So how are we going to transact the, before that we have to establish connection with the learner through this content. So how to establish connection with the learner? So through interaction. When you interact with the content with meaningful activities, convert the content into activities, and then make your learners to involve in this, then your learners will feel that, okay, it is worth studying this content, and they'll find the content is relevant to them, and they will show more and more interest, and they will look forward for your class. And not only that, they themselves will become what we discussed in the earlier, is that this learner self-directed learning. They will push themselves towards self-directed learning. So that is what it says. So a teacher, content, and learner. Teacher should be well versed with the pedagogy. With the help of the content, the teacher the content is converted into a transactable content according to the needs of the learner. And when the teacher tries to establish connection with the learner, he connects the learner through meaningful interaction. So the learner finds it very relevant for him or herself, and that makes that learner as an engaged learner, or this is called as engagement with the learner. Right. So this is the most popular cone. I think most of you may be aware of this cone, which is called as the Edgar Dale's cone of experience. Why I'm showing this cone is this acts as a framework for identifying the appropriate teaching learning method for engaging our learners. See, the first half of this, not the first, the first four sections, that is from 10% to 15%, the learner is involved passively. There is no active involvement of the learner. Why? Because here the learner is only at the receptive end. So he reads, he hears, he sees, and he uses both seeing and then hearing. It is only he is at the receptive end, and he has no role to create something, analyze something, solve something, discuss something. So that is not happening here. Okay, but the last two things, there is ample opportunity for the learner to think, learn, reason, judge, solve problem. All these things can happen in the last two sections. That is why it is said that the last two sections indicates active learning, and the first four sections indicates passive learning. So when you say that you are engaging your learner, it should be active engagement. So always think that make use of this cone of learning and identify appropriate teaching learning methods. So for example, if you are going to do a presentation, a demonstration, then it comes at the last point. If you are going to use a simulator, in a simulator, you are providing opportunity for the learner to do and learn. In a discussion, you are giving opportunity for the learner, open opportunity for the learner to think, read, write, and then discuss, elaborate the problem, identify possible solutions for the problem, share the solution with the next person or the other person. So, and he receives feedback from others, and he refines the problem, and finally, as a group or as an individual, they reach a final solution for the problem. So when all these things can happen, so knowingly or unknowingly, the learner is dynamically involved in the process of learning. So which you call it as an engaged learner or engaged. So, but in the other four things, the learner is only a receiver of information. That's all. Okay, so again, I would like to say this is a framework for identifying appropriate teaching learning method depending on the level of engagement you want to engage your learners. Now, these are some of the model engagement strategies. I have just given briefly only the three things. There are also other strategies. So with reference to the content, if you want to engage your learners with your content, there are different ways how you can engage. Apart from the traditional textbooks, printed textbooks, you also have web pages, internet resources, video calls, podcasts. So say, for example, you have a content, make a video cast and then broadcast it. Make a podcast and then broadcast it to your students. And you can give them reading materials, ebooks are also a good source. Open education sources are available, seminars, labs, experience. All these things are the strategies for engaging your learner with the content. Then when it comes to the communication with their fellow students or other, I mean with their faculty, there are also other tools available like discussion boards, online rooms, emails. So people who are using Google Meet, Zoom and other platforms, they can have breakout rooms, and you can even communicate with your learner through email, mobile, WhatsApp, Skype, blogs, Twitter. All this can be used for this thing. It's not that only you have to engage them inside the classroom, even outside the classroom also you can. It's not that only during the session you have to engage your learners. Even before starting the session also, you can start your engagement. And it doesn't mean that once this physical session is over or the online session is over, our engagement stops. Even after that also, you can give post-session activities. So always the engagement is ubiquitous. It is pre-session, before the session, during the session, and after the session also. So these are some of the tools which will help faculty to use all these tools in an effective way so that you can effectively engage your learners. Then the third one is the collaboration peers, where you can have the wiki pages, blogs, peer review, group projects, discussion. So this is you are taking your learner to the reflective level. The first one is you are taking your level, learner to the memory level. The second one helps them to reach the understanding level. And the third one, when they collaborate, they reach the reflective level. So as I said, that when they reach the reflective level, they become creators, they become analyzers, they become problem solvers. So all these things can happen when you give an opportunity for them, when you allow them to collaborate with teachers and other peers. So these are some of the engagement strategies you can note down. And what are the factors that influence your student engagement in remote learning? So there are four major factors. There are a lot of other factors. Here I have mentioned only four major factors, that too with reference to the human needs. One of the factor is the success. Suppose if your learner finds, okay, the learning strategy that you use, the online strategy or the offline strategy, whatever it is, whatever you used for your learner is yields them the expected result, they will get the feel of success, and again they will look forward for such kind of learning experience. So success is one indicator, one factor. Then the curiosity. So it is left up to the teacher, the resources he uses, the way he motivates his students, so that the student shows more, so students become more curious, more and more curious, and look forward for the teacher session or look forward for more and more content for further learning. And the originality, if you give opportunity for the learners to think on their own, lot of ideas are generated by the learner, and that makes them to feel satisfied, that makes them to gain more confidence on them, and that will give them more self-expression. So they feel, okay, if I go to this class, I'll get an opportunity to self-express myself, I'll get more opportunity to introspect myself, I'll get more opportunity to express my ideas, I'll get more opportunity to generate more ideas, invent and then innovate. So he feels more confident. So that is also one of the factors to engage your remote learners. Then relationships. So the way you involve your learners with yourself, the way you connect with your learners, and the way you allow them to connect your learners with others, also encourage them to take part in the remote learning. So that connection should be meaningful connection, maybe in the form of a group discussion. Say, for example, the strategies like think, pair, share, roundtable brainstorming, circular questioning. All these things will help them to form team, help them to compete with others, create healthy competition among the learners. So all these things can happen only if the teacher provides opportunity for establishing healthy relationships with the teacher and healthy connection with other learners. So when you say you are engaging your learners, you can very well easily identify the engaged learners and the disengaged learners. When you say your learners are engaged, there are a lot of indicators to say that our learners are engaged. One is the willingness to participate. If your learners come forward to take part in your learning session, that shows they are engaged. They have started engaging themselves, and they assist others for learning. They involve frequently. They start creating something. You give them a task of creating a PowerPoint video or something like. If they involve themselves, they are engaged learners. They give you some answers. when you question. They are more interactive during the classrooms, initiate something, contribute something, and organize the learning content in an organized way, and then present it in before others. And so if you see all these behaviors, they are all called as indicators for engaged learner. The opposite of all these are the disengaged learner. Suppose if your learner is said to be engaged, if he shows willingness to participate, the disengaged learner will not show willingness to participate. If he's involved, if some learners come forward to involve in the process of learning, the disengaged learner will not involve. He will avoid, he will skip, he will postpone. Disengaged learners will not answer, disengaged learners will not involve in the problem solving activities. So all these things are called as what? Indicators to say that the learners are disengaged. So engaged versus disengaged. When you will be able to figure out all these things, only if you have more and more, formats for delivery. As I earlier said, pluralized content, pluralized delivery, pluralization of the content. So the same content in different formats will help you to identify whether your learner is engaged or not. Then the next thing is adult learning principles. So how to use adult learning principles in for learner engagement. This slide shows if you make your learners to feel it is goal oriented, they'll definitely become. So you have to tell this is the aim of the session, goal of the session, why they should learn, how they should learn. If they learn, you have to ask them how did they learn that particular topic. They will come out and say, so if there are 50 participants in a classroom, students in a classroom, you ask them, you take a content and then deliver it appropriately using the selected teaching learning method. Finally, ask the student, how are you going to learn? 50 students will give 50 ideas for learning that. So that is how you have to bring in relevance for learning, provide opportunity for the learners. So goal-oriented, practical, self-directed, task-oriented, experience, relevant. So all these are the nature of adult learners, and that will promote, that will help the teacher to use the intrinsic motivation of the learner. So because learners come with a lot of ideas, a lot of motivation inside the classroom. But after listening to the classroom, their motivation comes down sometimes, or they are not, they don't sustain their interest in the session. It is because that they are not engaged properly. So if we give more, if the session is more problem-centered, again, it becomes more engaging for the learners. So these are some of the adult learning principles that will help us to make our learner engage in a more meaningful way. So this slide shows that learners' engagement should be, when to start learners? Initially, teachers see most of the time it is only supply based. If you go to any college, not only in medical education, in any higher education, if you see it is only supply based. The content is given, the unit is given in the syllabus, and this is the content. I have to finish in 1 month or 1 week time this one. So last night I prepared. So today morning I'm presenting it. So this is why. So it is supply based. Since I prepared, I learned, and I prepared this resource, it is supply based. Whether the student want this or not, we don't bother. So that is called a supply based. But initially our classes should be supply based so that you can bring the learners on track. And finally, when due course of time, it should be on demand based. What is this demand based? You can only take the little of the content. Much of the content this learner should come and ask you, sir, how to learn this one, how to work with this one, how to solve this problem. Can you arrange a session on that? That is called as demand based. So if you have a content in your hand, don't transact all the content in your own style. Only just teach the fundamentals of the content. Rest of the thing, see that your students come and demand you in one way or other. So address the learning needs. So you have to address the learning needs if you think that. So you address what is this learning needs? Identify the learning needs of the learner. You will get many types of learners in a classroom. First of all, you should know who your learners are. What do they want to learn? And how they wanted to learn. So if you just make a small study of this thing, it's a small action research in your class, and you can easily address their learning needs. Then foster further learning. So your teaching should help them to what? Look for the other level of learning, which is called as the further learning. So initially you start with guided learning, go with the walk with the learner, then you direct them, instruct them. Okay, this is topic, learn this topic like this. That is called the directed self-learning. Then you tell them, okay, you choose this topic. This is the topic. You choose your method of learning. That is self-directed learning. Then both the topic and method of learning will be chosen by the learner. That is self-determined learning. So guided learning is fully guided by the teacher, that is the teacher walks with the learner. Directed self-learning is the teacher chooses the content and the method for learning. And in self-directed learning, the teacher only suggests the content. The method of learning is decided by the learner, and self-determined learning, both the content and method is decided by the learner. Say, for example, the Coursera courses, the MOOCs courses are all self-determined by the learner. So nobody is going to prevent the students to choose and learn such courses. So more intimate and engaging thing. So you should also, when you want to engage, your engagement should be intimate and then engaging for the learners, and take into consideration of adult teaching learning principles, and take into consideration, so social distancing should not be a problem, and it should not lead to social isolation. So thinking that we are all using these online platform and other things, remote learning, so everything, don't think so. In the name of remote learning, you don't social distance and then make your learner self-isolated. So social distancing is only for COVID and not for education. And so this social distancing should not lead to self-isolation. I hope you understand this point. So this is again one more thing which as a teacher we should know. Now we know that the content is already there. As you know that medical content is voluminous, and a medical student has to master enormous amount of knowledge to become a doctor or a PG or whatever it is. So the content is already there. And as a teacher, we also know some pedagogy, how to convert this content into pedagogy, the lesson plan and how to deliver it. And that is the pedagogy, the art and science of teaching that content. And technology is enough. Technology is there. Suppose if you look at the things, there is now the technology outnumber the content. So there are a lot of technologies available, but there are no much takers for the technology, because much of the technology is not known to the teachers, or they are not aware of it. Even if it is aware, even if they are aware, they don't come forward to use the technology. Now, why this slide is very important? So as I said, there are three components, three circles here. One is the content, the other one is the pedagogy. The third one is the technology. So as a teacher, first you make connection with the content, as I already said, then it becomes pedagogical content knowledge. A teacher should be familiar with three different knowledges. That is four different knowledges, which is called as, the first knowledge is the pedagogical content knowledge. This is pedagogical knowledge, knowledge of content, knowledge of technology, separate entity. Okay, now this pedagogical knowledge is combined with the content knowledge. Okay, the content knowledge is combined with the pedagogy, which you call it as the pedagogical content knowledge. Pedagogical content knowledge. Now you know the pedagogy, the teaching technology, and teaching learning techniques, and you are going to combine this teaching pedagogy with the technology, which is called as the pedagogical technology knowledge. Knowledge of pedagogy and technology, or techno-pedagogical knowledge. So pedagogical content knowledge, techno-pedagogical knowledge, then, and you are going to convert this content into different formats: video, audio, podcast, videocast, discussion forum, all these things with the help of technology. Then it becomes techno-content knowledge. So techno-content knowledge, techno-pedagogy knowledge, and pedagogical content knowledge. So three different knowledge. When you combine all these four, you get techno-pedagogical content knowledge, TPAC. So technological knowledge, content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, pedagogy and content, pedagogical content knowledge, then content and technology, technology content knowledge, then pedagogy and technology, techno-pedagogical knowledge. And when you combine all these three things, you get techno-pedagogical content knowledge. Why this techno-pedagogical content knowledge is important for medical teachers? Because now we have content, we know the teaching learning methods, but if you don't appropriately mix technology with content and the pedagogy, definitely we cannot engage the present generation children. Learners, because the current generation learners are the tech-savvy people, and they are called as the Z generation or Y generation, whatever generation you say. So they are all tech-savvy people. They are well informed, and technology may be a luxurious item for us as teachers. For us, it may be luxury, but it is part and parcel of their life. So we have to master this techno-pedagogical content knowledge. Then only we can identify appropriate content, apply it to the technology, and then deliver it accordingly. So please browse and see more about this particular information in Google. So how to plan for your for effective engagement of learner? Always you keep a lesson plan, which should include the objectives, and plan activities for pre-session, before the session, during the session, post-session, and apply the principles of pedagogy, andragogy, and pedagogy. And because why I'm mentioning this is sometimes we only use pedagogy, sometimes we overuse andragogy, sometimes we don't use none of this, and we think our learners can learn on themselves, which is called as pedagogy. Okay, so that should not happen. So appropriately mix all these learning principles or learning theories and learning engagement domains. See that always you engage your learners with their heart, head, hand. All these three things should be engaged appropriately. That is cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. And learning theories, take the support of the learning theories and see which kind of learning theory you are more using, so that your learners will become that sort of. So it is not that you have to use only cognitism, only behaviorism. It should be an eclectic approach. It should be a blend mixture of all these theories. So you can check your lesson plan whether your lesson plan addresses all these things, and it should generate learning evidence. Don't say, if you say you have taught your learners should have learned something. So what is the evidence for that? Behavioral modification. If you say that your behavior is modified, how are you going to assess? So appropriate assessment method is needed. And if you say that you have done the assessment, that means you are producing evidence for learning. So this is how you have to generate evidence. Whatever activity you give, see that a learning evidence is created and it goes into the portfolio of the student. That makes the learner more and more engaged. So provision for correction, reinforcement, and feedback should always be there. On the spot, you do the correction whenever they go a mistake, or you reinforce them when they do something correctly. You give them positive reinforce. When they do something wrongly, you just give them negative reinforcement, and finally you give them feedback for their improvement. And of course, assessment will also help you to identify their strengths and weakness and help them to identify the avenues for further learning. Now, this is the grid for the lesson plan. So this will be very helpful for you. Here I have mentioned the competencies, and the competencies will be broken according to our competency-based medical education. You break the competencies into objectives, addressing all the three domains, that is knowledge, attitude, and skills. And the learning principles which you are going to apply here, or the engagement principle, whether it is behavioral or cognitive or relational or behavioral, what kind of principle you are going to use, that also you just make a note. And then which theory it is mostly dependent on, and what are the activities you are going to give to your students, that is whether it is reading or writing, think, discuss, resolve, solve, analyze, create. All these things are part of this lesson plan. This will give you an idea about the content. Once you keep the content here, fit your content into this, then only you will see, oh, my content has this much opportunity for my students to be delivered. So if you don't fit your content, if you try to fit your content into all these things, then you'll see even a small content can be delivered in a very effective manner. So assessment and then feedback. So that is the purpose of this grade. So this lesson plan will help you to what? Bifurcate your content, split your content, so that the learning, your teaching becomes more effective and learning becomes more meaningful. So methods and tools for active learning, this is at a glance I will tell you. So for reading, listening, reading, writing, discussing, solve, create, evaluate, judge, reason, you have tools. So identify tools according to this. So online lecture, you have these tools: Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams. And for online quiz, opinion polls, for conducting opinion polls, there are tools like VoxVote and Poll Everywhere. Poll Everywhere can be embedded into a PowerPoint, and VoxVote can be used for conducting opinion polls. And online test by using the softwares like TestMouse, Google Forms, Class Markers can be used for conducting online tests. For e-assignments, you can use Google Classroom and Canvas. And discussion forum, use email, Google Groups, etc., etc. And for collaborative writing, you have a tool. I mean, Google Docs is a very wonderful tool for collaborate. On the spot, you can make your learners to contribute, and within 1 hour, you can create any. You can generate as much knowledge as possible, or within 10 minutes. Okay, so you can see who is contributing, who is editing. All these things can be seen through Google Docs. And reading exercises you can give reading exercise by referring some ebooks. Podcasts are there for listening exercise. Watch and learn can be done by using watch and learn exercise by using YouTube and other video sources. And virtual learning environment like virtual labs are there. Some Western universities have established very good virtual labs. Most of these things are freely available. Harvard University's virtual lab is freely available. You can learn to enter into a lab. You can take some tasks. You can do some laboratory activities, assess yourself. So digital case scenario, students as teachers and creators, identify some students and then use them for creating resources, identify some students and then interest them the job of teaching other students, introduce e-portfolio. So all these things will make, these are only short list. What you are seeing is only the minimum of things. There are also n number of activities. You can also improvise your own method of delivery, making your learners actively engaged in the process. Okay, so that is one thing. So usually whenever I take such sessions, I mean, about online teaching technology, people have some frequently asked questions, whether e-learning in higher education, or are we compromising with the traditional education system or formal education? So e-learning, though it is not formal education, when you say formal education, you need to have a stipulated age, qualification, entry behavior, exit behavior, and all those things are there. And that attendance is a must. So all these things are part of the punctuality, regularity, all those things are part of formal education. But still, e-learning can also be made as formal education. But the current curriculum is not designed for e-delivery, because that is again one more question again I used to get frequently from my participants. So current curriculum is not designed for e-delivery, that is for e-learning, but it can be converted for it can be designed for e-learning. So as a teacher, you have to see how this competency-based medical education can be effectively converted for e-delivery or e-mode of presentation. Then moving towards the de-schooling society. Suppose if this online thing, almost it is success now. So any course can be conducted online, any course, except the attitude part. People are telling that the skill part is little. Even now, still, there are a lot of scope that even the skill part and the attitude part can be very well met by the online education. So there is a school called, I mean, there is a school of thought called as de-schooling society, which says that remove all the schools and colleges, give freedom for the learners to choose their own courses and then learn. So the days are not, too far. Maybe it may happen in 1 or 2 decades also, because many, as I told you, now all these libraries are being slowly replaced with e-learning centers, or they are all used for some other purpose. You don't require infrastructure to conduct a school or a college. And thanks to COVID for making us to realize this situation. And the role of human element in online delivery. So how we affect, now only you have to think. You may feel no. So in that case, what is the role of teacher? Whether the teacher has an effective role or not. Now only the teacher has an effective role. So no one can substitute a teacher. You demolish the school, demolish all the classrooms, demolish library, everything you bring online. But if, without that human element, you cannot teach your students, because it is the human element that makes the course, effective. Why? Because now when we are capable of creating smart apps and smart educational applications, so who is creating all these? It is the human element that is creating. That means we are born to outsmart this technology. So we have to we should try to become smart teachers, so that this technology can be effectively used by by the teachers. That is the point you should note here. So the role of a human element in online teaching is that teachers should be more smarter than the technology they are using. Right. So these are some of the, how do I know my students are engaged in online, they are actively engaged in online thing. These are the indicators. So observational learning behavior, it can be classified into two groups, two categories. One is observational learning behavior, which includes reading emails, reading discussion posts, viewing videos, lecturing, documents, continuous. All these things are indicators to say my learner is behavior. It is an observational behavior, a learning behavior. And whether he is applying the knowledge he is using, what he learned in the online thing during his engagement, these are the indicators to say that the learner is applying. That is includes posting to the forums, writing reply mails, taking online quizzes and other tests. So all these are giving feedback, receive feedback, post self-created roses. These are all the indicators to say that the learner has started applying this thing. Then finally, evidence for meaningful learning may also be established by doing a systematic interaction analysis. So whenever you finish your class, see, do an interaction. How many students interacted? What did they interact? How did they interact? For what they interacted? What is the outcome of that interaction? So whether how many right answers you got, how many wrong answers you got, how many students were actively involved. So how much time was spent on this? All these big data will help you to say, which is called as interaction analysis, which you call it as big data. Normally, we call big data as the pass mark and the student age and the number of students, but they are all the small data. But the big data is sort of really a hidden data that is hidden in our classrooms. So when you look at all these things, you can really make use of such data to, through interaction analysis, and make your teaching learning more effective and more engaging. So engaging the teacher learning participation, how to engage teacher and learner by incentivizing them for their achievements and reward the students. You can use, say, Kahoot is a software where gamification is there. So if the learner comes top, it gives trophies, it gives sweets, it gives claps, people clap. So all these things gamifying, they give badges, star, and other badges are given, trophies are given, certificates. So like that, you can encourage the participation by incentivizing or by rewarding the learners as well as the teachers. So providing timely constructive feedback, adding self-assessment rubrics, all these things will enhance the participation of both the teacher and the learner. So to conclude, I would say that appropriate learner and engagement strategies will help our learners to continuously involve themselves in the learning process and will also foster good study. That is more important. So it's not what you are going to teach, how you teach is more important, and your teaching should foster good learning habit, and it should make your learners a continuous learner, lifelong learner. And all these require faculty involvement. So you have to, as a faculty, we have to train ourselves, equip ourselves, improve our skills on identifying the appropriate digital learning platforms, designing educational activities, and through proper planning. So then only we can effectively engage our learners. Then finally, though technology cannot fully substitute a good teaching or a teacher, it can be used as an effective tool for actively engaging the learner. So technology cannot substitute a teacher. Again, I would like to reinforce that. So only technology is another tool. That's all. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Your topic was exactly matching with your talk was exactly matching with your topic, engaging all the learners on the other side of the system. And thanks
Thank
for
you.
emphasizing on creating the connection between the content, teacher, and the learner, and also the connection between content, pedagogy, and technology knowledge. And we should move on to demand-based teaching than driven-based teaching. Thanks a lot for emphasizing everything, sir. There are a couple of questions for you. How to
Sure.
assess students in remote learning? Any effective platform available that
Yeah,
prevents
there are
malpractice?
yes, there are a lot of platforms available. I would suggest there is a very vast site, I mean, website available. One popular site which is called as Go Formative. Please browse and see Go Formative site. You have all kinds of assessment. See the tool I mentioned here, the poll everywhere, Voxvote, all these things are tools which can be used for online assessment. TestMoz is another very easy tool. Google Forms can be used. There are a lot of tools. But if you go to just browse and see the website Go Formative, it gives a variety of tools for online assessment, especially for the remote learners.
How often one can pluralize the content, as each mode of delivering content would have some advantage over the other?
Yeah, see, this is a good question. Actually, we cannot, if you ask me how often, you can say very often you have to pluralize it because the technological advancements are there. So once PowerPoint was the only technology. So before that, the OHP was the only technology. So before that, we were using the chalk and talk method. Now, the same PowerPoint, you have a lot of technology inside. How many of us are using the voiceover with the PowerPoint? There is a technology, lot of options are available in the technology. So same PowerPoint, you can include video. Similarly, there are also other forms of content, say video casts are there, podcasts are there. So if you think of how often, very often a teacher, but it all depends on the context and the group of learners you have. Suppose your learners are more and more demanding, you can pluralize more and more. Suppose as you started saying that whether it is frequently, is it good to frequently pluralize our content? No, I would say. So first go with the frequent content, test it with your learners, see whether how is the reception among your learners. Then you can decide on the other formats of the content. So this is how we have. So this will not happen immediately. So it will take out of experience only a teacher can design all these things, develop all these formats.
One last question. Can you please throw some light on rubric?
Sorry?
Rubric, R-U-B-R-I-C.
Rubrics, yeah.
Rubrics.
So rubrics are, it's a kind of assessment tool where you give a task and then you ask your learners, you split the task into different formats and then you ask whether they have learned or not, if they have learned, to what extent they have learned, and what kind of behavior modification. So according to your needs. So as a teacher, you can make a rubric into different behavioral terms. So the outcomes should be measured in terms of behavioral terms. Okay, it can be in the form of knowledge. If you want to assess knowledge also, you can assess. If you want to assess the attitude also, you can assess. And if you want to ask their reflection about the skill they learned, that can also. So it is, so the component, the elements in the rubrics are all given in the form of behavioral terms. As a teacher, if I want to know whether any behavior modification has taken place in my learner or not, and I have to say what kind of behavioral modification I expect from my learner, that should be made into a statement and ask my learner. If my learner says, okay, yes, not, or borderline, or to some extent, or not at all, then it is.
Thank you, sir. I would like to share a certificate from organizing committee for
Thank you.
accepting as a speaker in our conference. Thanks a lot.
So I take this opportunity to thank the organizers of SRM Medical College Hospital and Research Center, Dr. Lokaraj and Dr. Balaji, who is the compare for this session, anchor for this session, and all the other organizers for meticulously organizing this program. Thank you very much. And once again, thanks for the opportunity. All the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Can I sign out?
Yes, sir.